One of the most tide-changing moments in Taylor Swift's career revolved around the scandal linked to a rapper name-checking her in one of his songs, and the fallout that then ensued. However, Taylor also has a long list of names she's dropped over the years in her songs, and in this episode we're going to be revealing and categorising every single person Taylor has made reference to in her lyrics throughout her entire discography, as well as scrutinising how she went about these name checks. Welcome to Swiftly Spoken, a fan-made Taylor Swift podcast in which we break down her lyrics, deep dive into full album retrospectives, and theorise about what may be coming next. As always, we are your hosts, Lisa and Cameron, and welcome to the first episode of our 4th season, in which, as you can see, we're implementing a couple of changes. So it's very exciting to be in this new season, and we have a very exciting episode here today, which...
Ahead of us, yes.
Honestly, on like the surface level, you think, okay, we're just going to give a list of names. But then you like go a bit deeper and the references are actually very interesting. And I'm really excited to get into them.
Yes, no, same. Yeah, excited about season 4. Excited about all things purple. We are now purple.
We're in our lilac
sprung
era.
In our lilac speak now-y era. So yeah, all things exciting. We've got a new kind of season ahead of us. New leg of the Eras tour ahead of us. There's lots of fun things, you know. Still Taylor's versions to come, so there's still so much to talk about, so much to analyse. And yeah, we've got a fun episode anyways. Exciting things in the Swiftly Spoken world.
Yes, and with that, let us get into it. So Taylor Swift and name-checking or name-dropping or mentioning people's names is a very interesting thing, actually. It has more story and more history to it than you would imagine. In fact, a troublesome history. So like we kind of said, there's a big change in how she handles name-dropping people pre and post famous, which of course is a reference to the song by Kanye West, which name-checks Taylor. It was a critical moment, wasn't it, really?
Oh yeah, gosh. I think we all know where we were when that whole situation happened. I vividly remember it. It was just like awful to be a Taylor Swift fan, like the worst time.
We'll go chronologically, talking a little bit about how she has used names in lyrics. So firstly, starting off with kind of like the debut and the Fearless era. The start of it is very, I think, innocent but defiant, because it's a nod to real people in her life, real references to real friends and crushes and random people, which is quite brave of her, honestly, which she kind of like defined for herself in the debut prologue. She was like, yeah, I'm naming names. Here you go.
Yeah, exactly. And also, I think literally off the back, she used a name drop to help basically promote a single.
Yeah.
Originally, Tim McGraw was going to be called When You Think Tim McGraw, but the label were like, no, call it Tim McGraw, because that makes people think, oh, a song about Tim McGraw? You know, one of the biggest country artists at that time, that she used a name to basically help kind of pull an audience and interest of, oh, what's this song called that's about Tim McGraw, even though it necessarily isn't, because obviously it's about Tim McGraw's music, and someone remembering his music and their time with Taylor, but still she used a name drop to literally start her career. Exactly,
which is the other side of the coin of these early references to very much relevant celebrities at that moment, people that she didn't know personally, which would be change in time, things that people that had an effect on her in her day-to-day life. And as you said, Tim McGraw, we've spoken about this in previous episodes, but it was a perfect start because it was a great pull. It was a great hook to bring people in. He was extremely famous and well known at that point in that country scene, and it was a great way to be like, what's this about Tim McGraw then? But it's some random girl talking about him. And like you said, it sets up debut perfectly, and its themes of how music deeply can affect lives. Honestly, I love that is the beginning of this episode and the beginning of her career as well. Amazing. Love that. But before debut, we have name drops, even in pre-debut tracks, unreleased music.
Yes.
Angelina, Brad Pitt, Britney.
There's also Emily in Brought Up That Way. There's so many, even in the unreleased world, which is a kind of endless black hole in itself.
It's a world unto its own,
There's loads of references.
But it's interesting, and that's kind of the pattern that debut and Fearless sort of follows. And when stardom comes around for Taylor and she becomes more and more famous over the years, more references are made to people who now are celebrities that she actually knows. They are her peers now, and we'll get into that as we go through the list of names, because for a long time she would name names. Again, Speak Now, she said, and I'm naming names, and she did once again. But then came the Kanye West debacle, which I think drew a line in how Taylor would name check people in her music, and this is seen mostly in the Lover era, where she made quite a big deal about how she had specifically contacted Stella McCartney, showed her the entire lyric, the entire song, and made sure it was clear, like, this is going to mention you, are you okay with that, and this is the context, because that was something that she had been very much burned from previously. She'd been told that she'd be name checked, but the context wasn't given correctly, as we found out. And as you said, that was a cataclysmic moment for us as fans and her as a person.
Yes, no, and I think that even if maybe, you know, obviously Taylor's intention with Stella McCartney was nothing but just a bit of fun and is nice and was just a friendly kind of inclusion, but you never know how someone's going to take that. She might be like, oh, I don't want to be associated, you know. So yeah, it's nothing but professional to do that.
From Folklore onwards, the naming of people, and now we go into a different kind of naming of people. We go into references to a lot of fictional characters and created characters, which makes it even more interesting. Folklore isn't the album with the most names included. It's the Tortured Poets Department. It's the one that has the most names in it. There are so many names in this album. And I think that was one of the reasons that we have now decided to make this episode, which is one we spoke about in the past a few times. But I think it's the most relevant now because there's a grand total of 6 songs with titles, just titles, that include names in them on that album. And one has 4 names in it.
Yeah, I was going to say there's one that's like listing half the population's name. But no, this episode idea has been on, we have like a sheet of just like episode ideas that we're kind of constantly buzzing around and which one's kind of most relevant and which would be a really fun one. And this one's kind of been buzzing around for a while. But yeah, it's definitely never made more sense than right now because it is so relevant, because the most recent album is just crammed full of names and references. And
we're going to be breaking them down. We're going to go through the names and our classification of the names, like, are they real people, are they not, who is it making reference to, why, in just a minute. But before we get into that, as always, we have a couple of rules. Firstly, we're not going to be counting names that aren't actual references to people. So for example, some people might think that Chelsea is a reference, is a name, right? But that's not a reference to a person called Chelsea. It's a reference to the Chelsea Hotel, which is a place. Or, for example, we have Louis V for Louis Vuitton. We're not going to... Obviously, it's the name of a person, but she's not making reference to the person.
It's referencing the brand.
Exactly. Yeah. Same thing for Dom Perignon. Again, yes, it's the name of the person, but the brand of, in this case, alcohol is named after the real person, but she's not making reference to the person. She's making reference to the object. So keep that in mind in case you think, oh, maybe you're missing this one or that one. Let us know if you do feel like we've missed something, but we can kind of analyze it and see, like, in what context is she talking about the name, which is just as interesting as what we're going to do anyway. And secondly, we're not going to be counting names in the secret messages of her first 5 albums, just because they're not really lyrics, even though some of that, like, we do have like specific names of specific people who we know the people. We have Sam, we have Tay, we have Adam. I don't think it counts, right?
No, definitely not. They're not explicit lyrics. Those were just more kind of hints to who the song and stuff was about, which if we then started looking at hints of who songs are about, we could be here till next year. We'll be in season 5
that's
because
it.
You know,
it opens
there's so much
a rabbit
kind
hole
of wealth of like references to all sorts of people and stuff. So we're trying to put some rules in place so that this episode doesn't kind of run away with itself. Otherwise it would be very confusing and it would be like, what?
So let's get into it. Firstly, we're going to be talking about the different categories that we've kind of classified all of these names into, but then we're going to be going chronologically, as we always do, through the albums and talking about the names, so we can then analyse the album and talk about which category it has most of. That way it's a bit more interesting and a bit more analysis of each album and not just a list of names in each category. So the categories that we're going to be speaking about are, firstly, celebrities. There are a lot of famous name checks throughout Taylor's lyrics. It makes sense. She is famous herself. So some of these, like we said before, the transition to mentioning them as parts of her culture then goes into people that she actually knows, which is quite an interesting transition, and we'll see it happen in real time. Then we have real people. Obviously celebrities are real people, right? But these ones specifically, we're going to be like picking them out as people that Taylor knew in her personal life, or people that exist but aren't like celebrities but are known, you know? So it's kind of...
Yeah, and I think it's kind of the thing where like the way she's referencing them isn't in a way of celebrity. Like the way that she references like Stella McCartney, for example, is as her as a celebrity. Whereas like the real people is like she's referencing their real stories and them as real people in her life, rather than like referencing them because they relate to something that is celebrity, and that adds to the image, you know,
Right,
like Stella
yeah.
McCartney, the clothing brand.
A lot of these
and
people
that
are like
thing.
very much friends, family, crushes, things like that.
Yeah.
So it makes
Exactly.
sense.
They've now become celebrities, often
Yes.
through like being referenced by Taylor or being associated with her, but originally they were purely just kind of friends, and you know, like poor Abigail, bless her, was just, you know, her
That's
little
it.
friend from school.
So then we have other like specific subcategories. On one hand, we have fictional characters, which most of these are going to be from like novels and stories. Taylor, again, the further we get into the discography, the more of this is going to appear. You know, Taylor likes to make literary references, and within them, there are references to the characters of literature, for example. Then we also have mythical characters. Then we have religious references, which also appear throughout the discography. Then we have another category which we've just kind of like named random names, because as far as we know, these aren't real people. They're not references to literary characters that are known. They are most likely characters that Taylor has just created herself and are part of fiction, specifically Taylor Swift fiction, shall we say.
Yes. That's the thing. It's so hard to, once you do look into this, it is kind of a bit of a like, you know, mind maze of like, oh yeah, to kind of categorize them. And that's why we have tried to categorize it. Otherwise, like I said, it would just be very dull, just going, okay, she lists this person, this person, this person.
Yeah.
But by doing this, it makes it quite interesting. And then it makes it interesting and maybe kind of helps you like think of the process of maybe her writing and like where was she pulling that reference from, you know, when she was name dropping that person, because everything Taylor does, especially lyrically, is intentional.
Oh yeah.
So it's like where was that reference coming from? Was that because that was relating back to a celebrity? Was it because it was someone in a real life? Was it fictional? You know, it kind of adds to the story and hopefully maybe helps understand where she was maybe coming from when she was writing this and the lyrical kind of process of writing these songs. Hopefully, I think so. I feel like even just by us going through it, I thought, oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, no, definitely.
So,
I thought another interesting thing that we'll see is a lot of these ones, especially like the earlier ones, definitely feel like a time capsule of their time as well, because of the people who are referenced, which is another interesting thing, especially like, you know, the celebrities that are referenced. But it also is interesting to see like Taylor's points of cultural reference. I definitely think it's interesting to try and categorize them and also to break them down like this, because like you said, we don't just want to list off a list of names, because we all know that, but who are these people? Why do they appear in the Taylor Swift cinematic universe? Then finally we have another category, which this one really is just a fun little one because it's hard. They're not really names, and we're not classifying them as people really, but they're like allusions to people. The idea of these background characters, which I think is so interesting, and it like really does fill out the world of this music really interestingly. These we're just going to be calling other. We'll get into them at the end as just like a fun little bit. I think this one could definitely be filled out with so many other things. We've got to draw the line
endless.
somewhere, but you guys can let us know, like comment your favorite random characters of the Taylor Swift universe, because I think it's so funny. Like the lyrical universe has these like little side characters that sometimes appear, and I some of them are like really iconic as well. So we'll get into them at the end, because I think those are probably the funnest of all of these, to be honest.
Yeah, so kicking off, we're obviously starting with Debut, and there are 4 name-dropping references in Debut. Firstly, as we've obviously said before, Tim McGraw, and obviously he is categorised in our celebrity category. There is then also Drew, Corey and Mary, and we have categorised them as kind of real people. And I think what is interesting is, as we've said, obviously with Tim McGraw, that was a very clear kind of marketing strategy to kind of use his celebrity to kind of hook people of like, oh, that's interesting, to then get them on to Taylor Swift. But then the majority obviously are real people, because as Taylor said before, she was obviously very young while writing this album, between the ages of like 13 to 16, and a lot of the experiences that she was writing about weren't something that she had either experienced or were just impossible to experience as a 15-year-old. So she would pull references from other places, movies, films, real life, and clearly, obviously, the fact that the majority are real people within her life, it's obvious that she's pulling those references from there.
Very interesting. Very brave to include Drew and Corey. I could never.
Yes.
As a 16, 17-year-old, I could never, like...
Yeah, to literally... cool out, like, yeah. And then obviously with Drew, there's a very kind of like complex kind of lore around and story around him, because then obviously she released Teardrops on My Guitar. I believe he didn't really say anything at the time. Then like a year or so later, rocked up outside her house and was like, hey, it's me. And
Drew,
she's like, bit late,
no,
mate.
it's too late. No.
Yeah
It's
and then Yeah, bizarre. And then obviously then the kind of actor that then played him in Teardrops from My Guitar, I kind of think of him as well in a weird way.
As Drew.
But yeah. Yeah,
he is Drew for us now.
He is.
Don't add another Drew into it. There's already two.
Yeah.
Let's not add any more.
Two, which makes it complex.
All these Drews.
But what is also interesting with that is on the Fearless tour, in the kind of intervals, Taylor had very strange kind of like videos and stuff. Like she used to love like a vlog.
Oh yes, she did love a vlog. Yes,
like her YouTube,
very much so.
All sorts of weird and wonderful vlogs. And she did this segment about people that were name dropped in Taylor's songs,
yes,
and how it's like supposedly ruined their lives and like these tortured people. And one of them is Tim McGraw. He was like, everyone forgets that I'm the first. He was like, and all anyone says is, when you think Tim McGraw. And then she gets Drew, the actor, from...
Oh, good.
I believe his name's Tyler, from the music video. He then is like, oh yeah, everyone just says Drew looks at me, Drew, every time I look at someone, which is quite funny. And then she does this segment where she's supposedly on a date with this guy called Neil, and she's like, how do you spell that? And then she like gets out a thing and it's like, oh, what can I rhyme Neil with? Yeah. Which is quite funny. So Taylor was clearly joking
in on the joke. Yeah. Unfortunately, like many things that then came back to bite her as time went on and became like this horrible stereotype that people had of her. But I think it's so innocent. It's so...
Yeah, it's a bit of fun.
It is. It's also very brave, like I said before, and it's just like writing about what you know, how you've lived. Corey, she had a little crush on these people. Mary, is this story of this neighbour and how they went on with their life. It's just like very real, very like, these are the stories that I know, and very country. Like, these are the names of the people that I know and that I have grown up loving and knowing, and now I want to tell their stories, which we will round back to, we will circle back to as time goes on. No, I think they're really cute. I like them. And yeah, she was brave. And I don't think it ruined anyone's life. If anything, it gave them, over time, notoriety, if you ask me.
Yes, definitely.
Then we move on to Fearless, which kind of follows in the same footsteps, really. Although, maybe not so much. We have Stephen, who is obviously from the song Hey Stephen. And Stephen is a real person, also kind of celebrity, because he's a frontman.
Kind of celebrity.
Yeah, of a band.
Yeah.
This is a reference to Stephen Lyles, who has spoken about being referenced in Hey Stephen and found it flattering. So, there you go. But again, another kind of like crushy moment. Also, these songs are kind of positive, really, up to now, with the names that have been dropped. Teardrops is obviously a sad song, but it's not calling Drew out. Corey's reference is a nice one, and Stephen's is as well. Then we have Romeo and Juliet. Obviously, probably these are the most recognisable name drops in Taylor Swift history because they are from Love Story.
Yes.
Of course.
Yes. And often people that are not maybe overly familiar with Taylor's music and discography think that Love Story is called Romeo and Juliet.
Yeah.
The amount of people that will say, oh, the Romeo and Juliet song. Yeah. Romeo and Juliet. I'm like, no. But yes, so we know the story behind Love Story. Romeo and Juliet, of course, fictional characters, and Taylor wanted to give them their happy ending. And so she did. Then we have Abigail. Again, this is a big one in the Taylor Swift lore of it all, really. From 15. This established Abigail also as the Taylor Swift friend, yes. Like Abigail Anderson
from
is
the
like
start. Yeah. And it's
exactly.
So I love that. I really love that they still,
because then obviously she's also in the kind of Taylor Swift cinematic world as well.
She's
in Picture to Burn.
She is. I love that. Oh, I love that. I love that. I hope one day we get...
Then in 15...
Oh, Cameron, can you imagine if we got debut TV with Abigail appearance?
Abigail, that'd be amazing. Oh, yeah.
Oh, I'd love that. Like an MV for one of the vaults or something, and Abigail.
I've always been kind of so jealous of Abigail because, like, she gets to have these crazy... Like, obviously, like, everyone wants to be friends with Taylor Swift, but, like, imagine, like, the stuff she knows, like, about celebrities and the places she's been and the parties she's gone to, but she's like a normal person. She's like an average person that can go about her life probably quite freely.
That's true. I think
gets to hang out with, like, TTPD and Taylor Swift every so often.
A lot of people would recognise her. I do think she is kind of like on a different level. I don't know, it's very parasocial to be speaking about all of this, but I understand what you mean. But it is crazy, and I'm really, really glad that they have been friends for all that time. It's a testament to their friendship and Taylor as a person and Abigail as a person, and I think it's really cute as well. So I'm glad she was established back in Fearless as like the number one reference to a person in the Taylor Swift universe, to be honest. And then finally we have Snow White, which is a bit of a rogue reference, but it is there, so we wanted to include as many as possible. Snow White is referenced in The Best Day, and again, fictional character. Not much more to say about that.
Okay, next we have Speak Now, which is obviously marketed definitely at the time of the original release as this kind of like all confessional, everything's on the table, I'm going to tell you everything. So it's interesting that obviously Speak Now is full of references to people. So the first one is obviously John, which is reference to John Mayer.
Allegedly. Allegedly.
Yes, allegedly.
All of this is very much allegedly.
Yes.
Especially in this case.
Yes, definitely.
Dear John is a great play on words as well. It's the Dear John letter,
yes,
right?
Exactly.
This anonymous letter to this lover or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, we kind of know who John is. But
yeah, well, I always think of that interview where, in the Red Era, where the interviewer called it out and was like, "Oh, he felt," and Taylor was like, "Oh, please," you know what I mean? Like, I love those. Like, "Oh, Jesus, get a grip." You know
that is great. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But then next is Superman, who's obviously a fictional character, and that is obviously in the song Superman.
Mm-hmm.
Next is When Emma Falls in Love, and allegedly again, this is Emma Stone.
Yes, that's what everyone believes.
What everyone believes.
I agree.
It seems to make the most sense.
Yeah.
I agree. I think there's a behind the scenes, well, not behind the scenes, like an interview that Taylor did in the Speak Now era where I believe she's like pulling questions out of a box, and one of them's like, you know, which of your friends do you want to be? And she's kind of, or yeah, it's something like that. And she talks about Emma Stone in a very positive way and references stuff that is kind of said and sung about in When Emma Falls in Love, that it kind of makes sense.
It all
They
makes...
were best friends around that time, so
yeah,
and still are, but we're definitely very publicly best friends. So obviously she is a celebrity if it is allegedly about Emma Stone. And then the final reference is Cleopatra, who is also referenced in When Emma Falls in Love. And obviously Cleopatra is a historical figure and therefore a celebrity. What's interesting is that Speak Now actually, even though it's kind of deemed as this very confessional album and it's quite obvious who the songs are about, she doesn't really reference the people directly, because obviously previously, pre-Taylor's version, there was actually only 2 references, one of which is Superman, who's a fictional figure.
So there's really only one big name. So when she was saying she was naming names, it was just in them notes, in the secret messages.
In their notes, she was naming names.
Notes,
yes,
there's
definitely.
like, that is they're the ones that are the fullest of names, really. Like we said before, Tay is in there.
She's like giving their birthday, you know what I mean?
If we count to him,
she's giving their address.
If we count Toby as well, and some people say it's to and by, but we don't know. So yeah, no, if we were counting the secret messages, Speak Now would be top.
Yeah. Like
you said, that's an interesting thing. And also, an interesting note for this album is John, the reference to John, or the character of John in the song, is the first one that kind of is like a shady reference. It's about, you don't want to be John. You don't mind if you're Drew. No. You don't mind if you're Corey. You'd be happy to be Stephen. You'd be happy to be Abigail. Yeah. But you wouldn't want to be John.
No.
You don't want to be John. So we'll leave it at that.
Swiftly on.
Next up we have Red, and here we move into the first self-reference, which is going to be an interesting pattern we have come across throughout her discography, but this is the first time she said her own name in a song, technically. But before that we have Bobby, which is a reference to Robert Kennedy, which is in the song Starlight, which basically is a very biographical song. It does remind me, when I think of Starlight, I think of The Last Great American Dynasty and those type of songs, because it is very much telling this story about this character that is not Taylor, but is a celebrity. Because Mary from Mary's song is that, but it's not the same, because we don't know this character. We don't know this figure personally, but people know who Bobby is. They know the story of the Kennedys.
Yeah.
And Taylor was prompted to write this story, and so she did in Starlight. Again,
I think what's so funny about that lyric is that I definitely did when I first heard it, was that so many people hear it, it's like, I'm a Barbie on the boardwalk. So I always think of that whenever I hear that lyric. That I always think of Barbie over Bobby.
I love that. Oh, and that reminded me, before we do get too much further into Red, another Speak Now one, in If This Was a Movie, which is a Speak Now song, by the way.
Yes, I will die on the hill. In the Swiftly Spoken World, that is a Speak Now song, and I will not take anything
You can call it more Speak Now, you can call it whatever you want, you can call it more Fearless, but it's
Speak Now.
But anyway,
yeah.
Back in the day, the big thing around that song is that a lot of people misunderstood that lyric as well and heard Eli instead of come back to me, like, and they would say, who's Eli? well, no, there is no Eli.
Yeah, who is Eli?
The lyric is obviously come back to me like if this was a movie, blah, blah, blah.
We were.
Yeah, so that reminded me of that. But yeah, so Bobby, reference to the Kennedys. Then we have, of course, Ronan, which isn't a name referenced in a lyric, but is the name of a song. And I think that's one of the first times that we're going to see this appear. A name that is the name of a song, but not in the lyrics. Of course, Ronan is the reference to Maya Thompson's son. Maya Thompson, who we all know affectionately in Taylor Swift fandom as Mama Maya, who Taylor co-wrote the song with technically because she got the lyrics from that song from blog posts and writings of Maya about her horrific experience with Ronan and cancer. So again, this is the name of the song, but not actually referenced in the lyrics. But I love that she named it Ronan. It is the perfect tribute. Like, it's the best name for it, to be honest with you.
Yeah, definitely.
Then we have James Taylor, which is a casual reference. Really, I guess it is a reference to the music of James Taylor, but James Taylor, just like Tim McGraw, is a real person, and they are talking about the music of James Taylor. So
yeah.
And then, of course, we have finally that first reference to herself. Who's Taylor Swift anyway? Ew. It's not really a lyric, but it is, to be honest. Like, it
is technically.
It's said, not sung, but it's said. It's said nonetheless.
Yeah, it's still said, and it is obviously kind of had a new resurgence, really, I think, with the Eras Tour and the 22 t-shirts.
Yeah.
I feel like not many people really knew that lyric. I don't think pre-Eras Tour I didn't really see that lyric referenced very often, but now it's like referenced all the time, and people use other lyrics to kind of do the
like who's
someone
whatever.
anyway. Ooh. Yeah. Like, who uses typewriters anyway? Ooh. I saw someone wear a t-shirt.
I love that.
It's really funny.
That's so good. Yeah.
Next we move on to 1989, which actually has the least references out of all of the albums. So there's only two on here. One is obviously James Dean, who is a very famous American film star, model, however you want to describe him, and obviously he is a celebrity. And then the other reference, which is kind of a bit of a vague one, I've included it just because, is Cheshire Cat, who, if it is referencing this, is obviously a fictional character from Alice in Wonderland.
Yes.
But I don't know if it's really, I feel like it's more describing something like that.
Yeah, because the lyric is like,
call out to the Cheshire Cat.
Your Cheshire Cat smile. So technically it is like a descriptive of what the smile was like. Also, it's not really a person, it's a cat, if anything. I guess he does speak.
Yeah.
But how in the weeds are we going to get? We'll leave it at that. Sadly, that is it for 1989. We're not counting style. It's not. I know some people would want to, but we're not going to.
No. It like I said, it's like we've said with other songs, like the songs are obviously in reference to a person or a situation or a relationship, but that doesn't mean that it is, otherwise we would literally be here all day.
Yeah, definitely.
And
we've got to draw the line.
That word is purely, we never go out of style.
Exactly.
Obviously it's a clever play on words, but
definitely
it is not referencing that person.
Yeah. Which leads us to Reputation, which does have a few more. And again, another Taylor self-reference. Firstly, we have Burton and Taylor, which come together in Ready For It. And Burton is a reference to Richard Burton, and Taylor is a reference to Elizabeth Taylor, who very famously fell in and out of love, got married, divorced, back together like thousands of times. And the interesting thing is that she says Burton to this Taylor. So really, is that a reference to Elizabeth Taylor? Or is it to herself? Is this the second self-referential Taylor that she says? I say yes. What is your opinion?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I think yes. And what is also interesting is in the rep room, which was like the kind of meet and greet room backstage, she actually had a poster of an Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton movie in the rep room. I believe it was Cleopatra movie, if my facts are correct, and I think they are.
Okay.
Which is also interesting that she then references that lyric and those people in the rep room.
Right.
So I don't know, because technically she was obviously, that technically shows that it was Elizabeth Taylor, but like you said, the way that the lyrics are worded, it's a clever play on of
exactly. Yeah.
You're the Richard Burton
to me,
to the Elizabeth Taylor, and I am
Taylor. Yeah. It's a clever play, definitely. But let us know, when you imagine it, how do you imagine this person? Is she referencing herself? Is it Elizabeth? Is it both? It's interesting, definitely. And again, a clever wordplay. A self-referential moment that isn't as debatable, however, is in Look What You Made Me Do, the old Taylor can't come to the phone right now, which is quite plain and simple of reference to Taylor herself. Then we also have references to more kind of like celebrities with Bonnie and Clyde. Obviously notorious for very different reasons. We're not talking about actors or models anymore. Bonnie and Clyde are in Getaway Car, the song. Obviously their story ends in tragedy, and so does the story of the people in the getaway car. And then finally, for Reputation, we also have a reference to Gatsby, Feeling So Gatsby for that whole year. And this one is, of course, a fictional character, the Great Gatsby, and she loves her references, especially during 1989 rep time. She loved reading a good Fitzgerald book. She was well into his literature.
Okay, so next is Lover, and Lover is a real interesting one because, as we said, this is kind of when potentially she was kind of being a bit more clever with, well, maybe more intentional with references and who she was referencing, because obviously on Reputation it was people that were no longer alive or were fictional. Yeah. So there was kind of no, you know, if you reference them, there's no like...
You don't have to call them up and be like,
there's not going to be a TMZ article about it, and is it shady, and, you know, stuff like that. Whereas obviously Lover is a very different story because she references Drake, which I've always found it a rogue one in my feelings more than Drake.
Oh, you know what I think of that song.
Yeah, exactly.
And that contributes to it, can't lie.
Yes, I've always found that a rogue one. I've always found their kind of very brief friendship, late 1989, early Reputation, also a bit rogue. I wonder if he also was called.
I'd say so, because back in that time, Taylor did, in like the Lover era, when she was doing interviews prior to the album coming out, during like the Me promotional era, she did mention him a few times and be like, oh, I love how he sings a lyric, and really like
Entertainment Weekly, exactly, when she wore the badge.
There you go. Yep, she had the Drake badge. Like, it was talking about all the things like she loved at that point, and one of them was how she really loved how Drake would take lyrics and like really make a fun reference, which is what that lyric is. In My Feelings More Than Drake, which makes a reference to a song from that artist. One thing that is interesting in that lyric is she does make reference to a song. And another episode, you guys have to let us know if you're interested in that, going through all of the songs and the music that Taylor has referenced in her music. Because I think that is so meta and it's so interesting, because especially for TTPD, again, references of really interesting music go on in that album.
Oh, yes. That one is like full of it. Yes, so next on the list is Leo, who is a celebrity because it is referencing Leonardo DiCaprio, and that is not alleged, that is confirmed. The Lover music video basically confirms it because it's all based around him and movies he's been in and pat pics of him on a big boat with a load of women. So yeah, that's obviously him. Next we have Springsteen, who again is obviously a celebrity, Bruce Springsteen. I do believe potentially she probably would have reached out to him because obviously she'd just kind of been on stage with him during the rep era.
That's true. Yeah, I
so
think
she
again.
Could have even asked him then.
But wait, we skipped over Leo for that. Do you think she called up Leonardo DiCaprio?
We did.
Did she say? No. Is it okay to say in The Man, I'd be just like Leo in Saint Tropez? Because it's a bit of a shady lyric. It is.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it's warranted. Yeah, and like you said, The Man is kind of like set around, you know, the imagery of Leonardo DiCaprio films and things like that. And it makes sense. Like, what can I say? But so, was that clear?
I guess. I don't know. I guess maybe. But then Springsteen's the same, it's the second name. I was just saying, because maybe it's Leo, like, it doesn't actually say who.
But we all know, really, like, we all...
Kind of, yeah, it comes to mind, Drake doesn't it? Stella McCartney or something. Yeah. Don't know. Interesting. That is interesting. But then next, obviously, is Stella McCartney, who, as we've said, is obviously in London Boy and was obviously cleared and spoken to prior to that.
Yeah, worked together afterwards.
Yeah, exactly. The final reference is obviously is actually our first religious figure, and that is Jesus, who is referenced in Soon You'll Get Better.
Which technically she has mentioned Jesus Christ before. Just we haven't.
Yes.
We're going through the mainline discography, so we're just going through the 11 studio albums. But again, in
if we count Christmas collection.
Yes. Yeah, we already would have a reference. What's interesting about Lover is here is where we can see the big shift. Because if we look at Debut, we've kind of like, as we classify them, we've like highlighted them in different colours. And Debut has a lot of green, which is our real people, kind of like people, friends, family of Taylor, and Yellow is celebrities, and Lover is just jam-packed of these famous people, which is an interesting way to try to like transition. Obviously her life had changed a lot between debut and Lover, so her real friends, even if she does mention them, or real people that she knows, which we'll get into,
are now celebrities.
Exactly, they are already kind of like people that are known to us in the sphere of celebrities and famous people. So it makes sense, but it's an interesting transition to see. Which leads us to Folklore, which we have some debatable ones. We'll go through them. The first two are they make sense, right? We have Rebecca and Bill. Rebecca and Bill, of course, are referenced in The Last Great American Dynasty. She is telling their story, technically. This is in the vein of the ones that we've said before, like the biography songs, like Starlight, or like we're going to see afterwards. But Rebecca and Bill, if you want to know more about them, you can check out one of our first ever episodes, if you want to.
Yes. Oh, yes. Oh, that episode. Oh, God. Every time that that episode is doing so well. Please stop watching it because it's so awkward. We are so awkward in it. It was like 3, maybe 4 episodes in to us doing the podcast when we were still a little bit cheeky.
I think even less. It was one of the first. It really was.
It might be like number 2.
Yeah.
But people clearly love it, so
and we're thankful for that.
Should be thankful for that.
Yeah, of course. But it is kind of like awkward for us because we were very nervous. Our audio setup is not what it is. I mean, obviously,
it's atrocious.
We're very homemade still, but we do what we can. But back then, it was we didn't know how to edit. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, we were literally using. I had like iPhone headphones that like one of the ears didn't work.
Yeah, I was using my phone. That was it.
Proper budget.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then I think there was a bit where there was a bit where like it, because we used to always have problems with like bits cutting out and glitching, and I had to go back in and like record something. I think it was like the I knew your trouble sign thing.
Oh yeah, that's true.
It's so obvious. It's like suddenly this like very different audio like for 3 seconds and then back out.
Yeah.
But yeah, check that out because it is still interesting.
And it's factual.
And we do still analyse it in depth.
As we always like to do, we kind of like do our research beforehand. We go into things with all of the knowledge that we have, that we try and ground in realistic things, plus anything that we looked up. It was interesting. A lot of interesting comments on that one as well. I guess because it reached like a varied audience, which is always interesting to see. But yeah, if you haven't seen that or you don't know who these people are, you check that out. We've got all their life story basically laid out for you. But if not, don't worry because it's not the best episode ever. Still, next up we have Betty, James and Inez. And these are difficult because how do you classify them? Obviously, inside the Taylor Swift lyrical universe, they are fictional. Yeah, they're random names, really. These ones we classify like as Taylor Swift created characters. Yes. However, technically they are real people and they're like the children of celebrities. They are like real references and then on purpose, like made that way on purpose. She didn't want to just give her characters any of names. She wanted to give these 3 specific names. So, but then she does change genders of them. That is true. Although that is up for the debate. We never really get... Yes, that is very true. Yeah, that is also true. I think what's interesting as well with these characters, obviously they are the children of Ryan Reynolds and Blake Lively, is that obviously they are kind of deeply woven into the Taylor Swift world and musical sphere, because obviously on Reputation, on the song Gorgeous, James does the gorgeous. So yeah, interesting that they kind of make a reappearance in Folklore as well. And as an actual reference. It's interesting because obviously as the re-recordings come into play, who's going to say gorgeous at the beginning of Gorgeous? I hadn't even thought of that. Some people have the idea that, because obviously when the re-recordings were like at the start of it all, right? Because that was a few years ago now, honestly. Like, years 2019, 2020. Some people were saying that maybe Inez, which was the baby, that she was a little baby at that point, was going to be the one to say gorgeous. And obviously Blake has now had another child, and some people were thinking maybe that child will say gorgeous. One of the children are going to say it. So I don't know what will happen there, like, or can you use that part of the re-recording again, because technically it's, I don't know, it's kind of like, I'm trying to, the other spoken parts Taylor's redone, hasn't she? Even like the laugh. Oh yeah. But they're like Taylor, you know what I mean? Like it is part of Taylor singing and recording. But for example, in the Lover track, London Boy, at the beginning, that's not part of anything. That's just like a recording that Taylor like
it's from an interview
plopped in there, which is, you know, detailed to us, and it's given its proper reference and the rest of it. But yeah, it's I don't know, we'll have to wait and see what happens there, but it will be interesting to see. Next up from Folklore, we have Peter and Wendy. Again, these are very much fictional characters. They make reference to like Peter Pan and Wendy from Peter Pan. We're going to get a repeat of Peter further along the line. From the Last Great American Dynasty, we also have Darley. He's mentioned in there as well. Again, this is a celebrity. And finally, rounding us up for Folklore on the last song, On the Lakes. This one is an interesting one because it's a bit of a play on words, but it is a reference technically to the famous writer Wordsworth. In the same vein, she's saying two words. She's saying, what are my words worth? So does it count as a name drop? Again, I say yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, because I think that it's just very clever lyricism.
Also, I think
referencing him.
I believe that in the lyric booklet it is capitalized, written all together in the Folklore lyric booklet. It's very much a reference, yeah.
Definitely. Okay, so next is Folklore's sister, Evermore, and this one actually has a really interesting mix of people and references and names. So firstly, we obviously have Marjorie, who we've put under the category of real people, which is obviously Taylor's grandma on her mother's side. Next, we have Dorothea, who is a kind of random fictional character, but isn't like a real fictional character. It's kind of just like a random name.
This one is like
just kind of now a character in Taylor Swift's world.
Exactly. This one's different because like Betty, we could classify as these characters in the Taylor Swift world random name, but not really because it's named after a person. But Dorothea is very much, it's not named after anyone, really. It's not a real person. It could be an allusion to something or someone. But I think that the interesting thing here is that this song at some point in time was not going to be featured on Evermore. It was in the track list for Big Red Machine's upcoming album, which at that point they didn't know what it was going to be called or what project they were making, but it was very much in that list of all these songs. Interesting to see how it did end up on Evermore, and it is kind of like it sticks out. It's different to all of the other ones that came before.
And is the first reference to just a totally random name that has no kind of real person linked to it, or even fictional character, you know, even like a well-known fictional character is purely just a character that Taylor has created that has no kind of history from, or isn't, the name isn't being pulled from anywhere. Obviously the ideas behind the song is probably being pulled from something, but we obviously don't know where that came from. But anyways, Dorothea is an interesting one. Next we have Esty, who is obviously a reference to Esty Haim, one of the Haim sisters, one of Taylor's friends. And again, this is a kind of interesting one because obviously it is a reference to Esty Haim, the celebrity, and that's why we've deemed it as a celebrity. However, in the context of the song, it's a fictional, random character. Yeah. It's a bit like kind of Betty, James, Inez, but still an interesting one nonetheless. And funny that then, because of that, she then pulled in Haim and kind of got them featured on the song. So it's kind of fun that it kind of became, like you kind of said, almost a bit meta in itself.
Very much so.
The character of Etsy was then on the song.
Yeah. Because again, it does function very much similarly to Betty, James and Inez. Like, it's not really them, but it's named after them, but it's not really. It's just a character, right? And she gets killed off, so... Yeah, so again, like you said, meta in that sense.
And finally on Evermore we have Midas, who's again a kind of a bit of a murky one because it seems that Midas was a real figure and therefore technically is a celebrity. However, the thing that Taylor is referencing is obviously the Midas touch and therefore kind of turning things to gold, which is a myth that is spawned off of a real figure or a historical figure. So he's kind of a bit of both, kind of mythical, kind of real, but also kind of not really referenced in that way. It's a bit like there's also a reference on Red with Achilles' heel.
Exactly. It's kind of like a descriptor. Yeah.
Exactly. Even though Achilles is obviously a figure, the thing that Taylor's referencing is actually describing that as just a saying figure. It's a bit like Cheshire Cat. That's the thing. There's lots of kind of grey areas, but still worth the mention.
Worth the mention.
So that is obviously Evermore.
Definitely referencing like the part of the mythological part of this person, but again, like you said, it's more of like your Midas touch. We're not really talking about King Midas in the song.
You are Midas.
Exactly. So again, bit of a grey area on this one, but we thought we'd bring it up. Before we get into Midnights, I just remembered another one that I found so funny, so I'm going to bring it up. There was just like this post, I can't remember where I read it, God knows, but someone said, I had heard this song wrong for such a long time, and I thought they were saying, I've been having a hard time with Justin. And I was like, who the hell is this Justin? And can they go away? Which, of course, is the real lyric from Folklore. I've been having a hard time adjusting. From This Is Me Trying.
Yes.
So I find that so funny. And now I always think about it when I listen to that song. So
it's a bit like, what's it? I didn't have it in myself to go with Grace.
Like the
I
person.
saw this going, who's Grace?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was like, no, you idiot. You know what I mean? Like, not Grace the person.
I love those kind of like lyric misunderstandings. And some people like, you can listen to a song for so very long and hear it one way, and even when you know it's right, keep hearing it that way because you heard it that way for such a long time, and then think, obviously, what was I thinking? But then then still
Stand Back Wasted.
Exactly, Stand Back Wasted.
I still think it was Stand Back Wasted, not Stand Back Where You Stood. It's
I actually never heard that one.
Version, I can't lie.
I know that's a big one, but I never heard it. I can't lie.
No, that one I've always heard, always heard like that.
Yeah.
When I then found it out, I was like, huh? And like I said, Taylor's version's a lot clearer, but I never understood the Starbucks lovers.
I never heard that either.
It was always a long list of ex-lovers.
I get it, but I never heard it. I remember the first time I listened to Blank Space, I did hear something strange. I didn't hear a long list of. I heard something about ex-lovers, but I didn't hear Starbucks. No. But still, interesting. Another interesting topic that perhaps one day we can delve into. Misheard lyrics are very funny, to be honest. And Justin, again, is a funny one. Which leads us into Midnights. And on Midnights, we have very varied references here. Firstly, we have Daisy May. And this is in You're on Your Own Kid. And it's a strange one. I see the Great Escape. So long, Daisy May. We can't say it's a real person because we don't know if it is. We don't know if this is like a friend or family member from back in the day.
From school or something.
That Taylor had to say goodbye to. I think it's more just a reference to a random name, like a character that Taylor has made up of like this typical person that you might, and which we're going to see again a lot more in TTPD, this typical person that she's given this name to this character of this small town. And I do think, funnily enough, in my head, whenever again, this is a bit random, but whenever I hear this lyric, I think of Daisy May, who is a character from Animal Crossing, which is just like just like a little like boar or something, and she has like turnips, she sells turnips. It makes sense to me in my head. So.
Yeah, no, mine is even Nisha.
Oh.
You probably won't even know who this is. It's an English comedian called Daisy May Cooper.
There you go.
I always think of her. And if you are English, British, or know of this country of Daisy May Cooper, then you'll probably know who I'm referencing. But if not, that is, I'm sure, just a very rogue. So yeah, it's interesting that we kind of pull, when these characters are random,
we fill in the blanks.
You do pull, who you think it is.
Who's your Daisy May? Let us know in the comments. Next up, we do have a very specific reference, which is Janet. I'm all for you, like Janet. Again, I love when she does this. Reference to a song, reference to the...
That has deeper meanings and lyrics.
Yep,
and, yes.
And then reference to the person who sings the song, Janet Jackson in this case, who also tweeted out afterwards about this reference and was like very, she really like enjoyed that Taylor had made reference to that song. Then we have our first reference of Ken, which is, we're going to classify as a fictional character because it is Ken from the Barbie universe. It's interesting how she likes to do that and how that happened around the time of, the Barbie resurgence of it all.
Yes. Wonder if that maybe had.
It was in the back of her mind.
Yeah, she was kind of visually just being aware of Barbies and Kens and stuff like that.
And then finally, this one is a bit of a niche one as well, because you have to dive into like the extra songs of Midnights. We have in the anti-hero
the
remix.
endless deluxe tracks.
We have in the anti-hero remix a Taylor reference once again. This is the third time that Taylor is referencing herself, though she does not sing this one. Jack Antonoff does, because it is the remix with Bleachers. So Jack says, Taylor, you'll be fine. I like this reference. It's a cute little reference.
Yes, and I like when I was at the Eras tour, I used to shout that.
Yep.
Yeah, that was one of my favourite bits to kind of do. I actually loved Anti-Hero Live when she was like, it's me, and then the crowd would go, hi, and then Taylor would go, hi. That was one of my favourite moments. So no, I loved that song live. That was really good fun, and that was a cool one to kind of shout and reference. And when people did, you were like, okay, you check out all the weird and wonderful extra remix versions that get released whenever a single comes out. So finally, we are on the 11th album, which is obviously the Torture Poets Department. which we have kind of based this episode around because there is a mountain of references. As Lisa said at the start, half the tracks are named after someone, let alone then the references within the tracks. So we have Dylan Thomas and Patti Smith. Dylan Thomas is a Welsh poet and Patti Smith is an American singer, songwriter, poet. Within the same song, there is 3 more references.
Yes.
One of which is Lucy, who, again, allegedly people have kind of put ties to something that never existed, but people have kind of alluded that it could potentially be Lucy Dacus from Boy Genius, but obviously that is not confirmed. That is very alleged, that is fan theory, but we've kind of put that character under celebrity because it seems that that character is at least real. It's either a celebrity or a real person.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem like this is a fictional character that Taylor has made out.
Because then we have...
Because all the other...
Jack, right after it.
Exactly, and all the other characters are real. So yeah, as Lisa said, then we have Jack, who's obviously Jack Antonoff, who we have then deemed as a celebrity as well, and then we have Charlie Puth, who is the most rogue person
Random shout
that I think Taylor's
honestly.
ever referenced.
Yeah. How did we go from Tim McGraw to Charlie Puth?
Yeah, strange. But then Charlie Puth is referenced, so, which is really interesting that one song, The Torture Poets Department...
Oh my God, so many names.
People.
This was the catalyst, really, of this episode, because we were like re-listening to this song. I was like, we have to do this episode now, because... there are so many names. Like, who are all these people?
Yeah, exactly. And it's just interesting that obviously they are all celebrities.
Yeah.
There is no fictional characters, nothing. It's all very much celebrity, which says a lot about that song, that experience, kind of where she is in her life. So yeah, very interesting. Moving on, we then obviously have But Daddy, I Love Him, and there's 2 references on there to names, and they are Sarah and Hannah. And we have categorised these similarly to Dorothy and Daisy May as random names, because again, it doesn't appear to be being pulled from anyone directly. They're purely just a kind of character that's just been given a name.
It's funny, this one, because it very much reminds me of like one of those names that have turned into more than just a name. They're like representatives of a certain stereotypical character, shall we say, like a Karen.
Yes.
Which now Karen has become more than just a name. It's become a reference to a very specific type of person. And this is something that she said in her Time Person of the Year interview, where she made reference to the Brads and Chads, which again, it doesn't just reference to people who are called Brad and Chad. It's like this idea of a person. It's very stereotypical. It is, because that is that kind of like what that person may be called. And yeah, it's interesting to delve into that type of reference, because Sarah and Hannah aren't real people. They are random names, but they're not just characters, in my opinion. They're more than that. They're an allusion to a type of person. Not saying that all Sarahs and all Hannahs are like that. It's not like that. That isn't the thing, and that's not what Taylor's saying either. But it does create this picture in your mind of a certain type, especially with how she describes them afterwards, like clutching their pearls.
In their Sunday best.
Exactly, yeah.
You can imagine that character very vividly, which is interesting. And then next we have our second reference to Ken, which I think is interesting. And what is really interesting is, prior to the Torture Poets Department, we didn't really have, other than Taylor reference, where she kind of references herself a couple of times, we didn't really have a repeat reference of characters. Whereas in Torture Poets we have a couple of repeat character references, one of which is Ken, which is on My Boy Breaks Only Toys, which makes sense in the context of that song, because it's literally about being like a doll and being destroyed as a kind of figurative toy. But yeah, that's interesting that is kind of referenced again. Next is the song Clara Bow, and again, similarly to the Torture Poets Department, there is a kind of big chunk of names. We obviously have Clara Bow, who is a famous kind of actress, again, celebrity. Stevie Nicks, again, obviously a very, very famous musician. Again, a celebrity. And then Taylor's 4th, technically, reference to herself in her discography, and definitely the most obvious, clear, kind of direct mirror reference of herself.
This is like in the lyrics, name, surname, full government name.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, date of birth. But yeah, very interesting. And I think when I first heard that for the first time, it's weird because I'd forgotten that we'd kind of heard her say her name before, even with, back in Red, but it felt like, whoa.
It was weird, though.
So weird.
I think it's because of the context as well.
Because it was like Taylor Swift as the singer.
Yeah.
Rather than You know, like it was very, very, very direct.
It also wasn't very like, obviously, it's not really tongue-in-cheek, it's not really cheeky funny, it's very serious. It's like, it's third person, you look like Taylor Swift.
And then next we have the song and the characters, Chloe, Sam, Sophia and Marcus.
Yep.
Again, we have categorised these similarly to Sarah, Hannah, Dorothy, etc. as random names.
Yes.
These people might be real people.
This one is the most interesting one, I think, out of all these names that we've spoken about, because like, who are these people? Why these names? Why these names?
Yes,
is the name of the song.
They seem they're very, very specific. It's hard, you know. They don't seem random, or they don't even. Unlike Sarah's and Hannah's, like you said, it's not. They don't really give off a type of person or character or anything like that. They feel very like specifically chosen, but then there's no real reference, and even the way they're kind of sung about in the song is kind of, I don't know, very passed over. There's no really explanation of who they are, what they are.
Is that the point, though? Like, all of these random people that just went in and out of this person's life, and they didn't really care for them. They were just like, you know what I mean? No. Like Chloe, Sam, Sophia, Marcus, all these people that you kind of like...
This list of people.
Got on with and forgot about me.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that now. Yeah, interesting. What are your theories? I've seen people say theories like these are references to alcohol. I read that once, but I don't...
Okay.
I can't tell you more now because... Well, it's not,
so I don't know.
I'm not sure, and that's not the point. But if you have any theories about it, again, let us know. It's interesting.
Let us know, definitely, yeah. And then next, we obviously have Amy from the song Thank You, Amy, who, again, it's weird. So many of them are like kind of like there's two sides to the coin of the name because, again, Amy we've categorised as a random name because obviously it's not, the physical name Amy is not a direct reference to anyone. However, in the context of the song and the title of the kind of
definitely the title,
song,
yeah.
It is definitely the title. It is a reference to someone, and that someone is obviously Kim Kardashian. But then, interestingly, again, it's kind of been recontextualized with the release of extra versions of the Torture Poets Department. One of which, the ones that were kind of the live songs, and there was one where Thank You Amy live at Wembley was the bonus track, and in there, rather than Kim being capitalized, it was YE, which is obviously Ye, which is now the name I believe that Kanye goes under. So technically it was kind of a re-reference to Kanye, which is quite interesting because I believe that was the week that he was releasing an album. So Amy is an interesting one as well because it is both random and celebrity if you take the name within its context of the song.
Again, allegedly, because she changed all of the discerning clues, you see. So we don't know.
Yes. So next we have Cassandra, who is our kind of second mythical character. So obviously she has been categorised as a mythical character. Next, interestingly, is our second reference to Peter. Again... Torture Poets has a re-reference to a previous character, which is obviously Peter from the song Cardigan, Peter Wendy, and then is kind of retold. I feel like the story's almost retold. Peter lost Wendy in this version of the song. He wasn't losing, he straight up lost. And I love this song, as we've said a million times. If you're a regular listener, you'll know how much we love this song. And I think this reference is so gorgeous and so just vivid.
It's so good, it really is. Lost
really
to the Lost Boys chapter of your life.
Wow, I can't even... That bridge is just one of the most gorgeous things Taylor's ever written. But anyways, interesting, and again, we've obviously categorised him as fictional. Next, we have Robin, who again is a real person. Similarly to Ronan, the song never actually says Robin, however, it's obviously named after Robin. And Robin is Aaron Destiner's child, so again, obviously real person.
We also have Aristotle.
And then the final reference in Torture Poets is Eve. Again, we have obviously categorised as a religious figure.
And there you have it. That is everyone. The gang's all here. It's a lot. It's a lot of references.
What an interesting group. Imagine all of these people stood in a room. You know,
Nightmare blunt rotation.
Romeo and Juliet stood with Charlie Puth and Janet Jackson.
God, I think there'd be some fights between some of these people.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah. No, it's really interesting. It's interesting to see how they kind of developed through time, especially these last couple of albums, how it's really branched out, and we have like now properly fake characters and leaning on all of these characters and making these references to people and stories, and definitely very interesting how that has progressed over time, especially from Folklore onwards. Things start to get more colourful more people, more random names that are then created by Taylor. She's not just referencing, she's creating. So really interesting. Which leads us to the last category, really, and it's something that we can wrap up on because, as we said, it's a very fun one. Other. A complex category that we've made. Not actual call-outs, like we said, allusions to people. They are people, but if we get too much in the weeds, we could go on about this for years and years. This is already a long episode as it is, but it's still fun, and I think these are some of my favourites, to be honest. Like, forget all these names of people. I want to know about these people. Some are kind of obvious. We have many, many references to Taylor's parents and her brother in her songs.
Yeah.
Her dad, her mum, her little brother. They're referenced throughout the discography, which is fun as well. We could have put them in, like, they're not really, like, technically first names, but they're definitely...
names.
They are who they are, and we know that they are who they are. So they're kind of, like, confirmed. Another fun one. This one is so fun to me. I love the boyfriend in the club. Like, we all know who it is.
Yeah, we know, yes.
But it's just the boyfriend in the club, which, an extension of that dickhead guy is also...
Yes. Another
like,
one.
we know who it is.
Interesting.
But we're not going to say his name.
No, that's the thing. I think Taylor's learned that sometimes it doesn't even need the name.
No. From Gorgeous as well, we have to do this because if not, we wouldn't be a Taylor Swift podcast. My cats. We all know the cats.
Yes.
She's making very...
Yes.
Meredith, Olivia. Benjamin wasn't around at that time, but we'll include him. We'll throw him in as well. In Lover, we have the girls who are killing it, which I think I wanted to add here just because in the You Need to Calm Down music video, we do have kind of like the girls who are killing it. Like, we know who she was kind of like writing about when she was writing that lyric, right?
Yeah, definitely. It kind of adds the visual of who that is about. It's quite obvious who it's about anyway. Like, it's obviously the other pop girls in that kind of sphere that Taylor's in, but by literally having the kind of drag versions of those characters, it makes very clear, okay, that was exactly who you were thinking about and think are killing it and are at the peak of their
which
game.
Was like pretty much a good selection. It represents its time pretty well. Do you think that any of them would change in this year if she was to put it out? If she were to put it out like 2024?
I think so.
Like, are we going to get a drag Sabrina Carpenter?
Yeah, I was going to say Sabrina or, you know...
I don't know, though, because the people that she did represent, like, you know, we have Adele, Beyonce, Katy Perry...
She's still massive.
Lady Gaga, Ariana Grande...
Gaga.
Nicki Minaj...
I think probably swap out Katy Perry, put Sabrina in.
Oh, aren't you supposed to be a Katy cat?
Yeah, but, like, if you're talking about relevance, I love Katy Perry. Like, don't get me wrong. Like I said, I will call myself a Katy cat. I actually genuinely really like her music. But technically, like, if we're going to be honest, like, you know, let's be real. Relevance, yeah, Sabrina Carpenter's way more relevant now. And obviously, she's a good friend of Taylor, so... Yeah,
that's true. I didn't mention, we also have Cardi B in there. And, of course, we also have Taylor herself.
Yes.
It didn't matter who was really there. These are the big, like...
No.
You know, big names in pop and all rightfully there. But just a curious thing to wonder if
it's just quite funny, isn't it? What the context would be if that song was now released.
Yeah.
Who would be... You know, who would even be some of the celebrities that are featured in there? Because, you know, people like Ellen and stuff...
My God, yeah. Ellen's not going to be there, no. Interesting. No. Yeah. Then we have the lucky one, which is a person. This, you know, when people like say, if you could find out anything about, we'll kind of like lessen the scope. If you could ask Taylor anything and be like, what is this? What is that? One of the questions have to be like, who is the lucky one? Who is she? Who are they?
Because they clearly are. They clearly are someone.
Yeah, it's based on someone. But then Taylor like put in the secret message, like, you'll never know. You'll never guess. And from Red as well, and this is again one of the top tier ones for me, one of my favourite references, some actress from All Too Well 10-minute version. Who is the actress in the... I
believe there's two kind of big...
Yes.
Kind of competitors, aren't there?
Right, yeah. So on one hand we have, I believe, Anne Hathaway.
Yes.
And on the other, Jennifer Aniston. Are those the ones you were thinking of?
Yes, those are the two, which is just quite funny that both of those are like titans in acting world. So to deem them as, there's some actress
in the bathroom.
Only the two biggest, you know what I mean?
Oh, that is, I love that though. I really do think that kind of like is the same as saying the boyfriend in the club. Like, sometimes you don't need to say a name. Because in that moment, it didn't matter who it was. She was distraught, crying.
They are the actresses.
Yeah. But
exactly.
It could have been anyone because you're like on the floor of a bathroom, you know? Love that.
Yeah.
Then we have a lot of references to people in Taylor's real life that we can't really name. We couldn't really know because they're like groups of people. Like your school friends, your friends, best mates.
Best mates.
Your best mates. My best mates. Your brother. Like...
all of the girls you've loved before.
Yeah. Like, they're groups of people, but they're not, like, what can we say? Who are these people? No one really knows. In the same vein, we have some guy from Bejewelled, who is one of my favourite characters as well. Some guy telling her Aura's moonstone. Who was this guy? And can we have what he was having? And then finally, my favourite, this is probably my favourite of the whole of them, is the waitress at the lakes.
Yes. And the fact we know who it is, and bless her, she told her kind of story, and yeah, I know, I love that. I love that little reference.
How you just said it like, I knew like Taylor Swift, some American singer.
And it's just like, and the fact that she's now like kind of embedded, she's immortalised forever.
Yeah.
That was so cool.
Can you imagine?
So cool.
Just like innocently but cheekily
some
saying,
offhand comment.
Yeah. And now you're in a Taylor Swift song.
Nuts.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah.
Love that.
Nuts. Yeah.
And there you have it. I think there must be more that we're kind of that's slipping through our fingers in this other category.
The other category is endless. We could, like I said, there's so many characters we could pull, and references to people or something, or alluding to someone or a character, even just like he, she, they.
That is way too,
there's so many.
That is like getting way too into it, to be honest.
Yeah, exactly. But these are the kind of main interesting ones, I think.
Your best friend's sister met someone at a club.
Exactly.
And he kissed her. Turns out it was some guy you hooked up with ages ago. Some wannabe Z-lister.
Yeah, some Z-list. Yeah, who's the Z-lister?
Who is this wannabe Z-lister? Again, there are theories about that. But if you can come up with any more, if you guys can let us know in the comments, like all of these little references, because I think the other category, all of the names that we went through are very interesting, and they do like point out patterns in different albums, as we have mentioned, and different, people, and how, again, a bit of a time capsule of the time, some of them. Other ones just shows Taylor's creativity, but the other one is the most interesting one because it is the most creative of them all, I think. But still, that leads us to the end of this very first episode in our 4th series, one that we wanted to tackle for a very long time, and I think right now was the best time because
perfect time
of that. TTPD being so full of all these little things. But still, if you enjoyed this episode, please do let us know. Leave a like on this video on YouTube. Subscribe if you haven't yet. If you're on Spotify or Apple Music, you can rate us to let us know if you are enjoying the podcast and are excited for this 4th season, which is so crazy to say, but we are here and we are continuing on. There's a lot of exciting things coming up. So make sure to follow us as well on Instagram. Our handle is @SwiftlySpokenPodcast because we always tease new episodes there, keep you in the know if there's anything you do need to know. And until next time, we will speak to you very, very soon.